My name is Simon Chadwick. I'm Professor of Sports Enterprise at Salford University. I'm also a member of the Centre for Sport Business Management here at the university. I've only worked in Manchester for a relatively short period of time. I've been here since January 2016. Sport is very important to Manchester, to the region, to the country and indeed to the world. For Manchester, a recent study showed that football alone may be worth somewhere in the region of about £300 million to the Manchester economy. So that's just one sport. If you look at the British economy as a whole, it's around 1.5% of national income. So in other words, 1.5% of everything generated in the economy in 1 year is generated by sport. As regards the global sport economy, there are various estimates, but one estimate suggests that it could be around $1 trillion US. So sport is worth $1 trillion US to the global sport economy. So sport is huge. Will sport continue to generate commercial and economic activity? I think so. The United States sports economy is still the biggest in the world, accounting for nearly 50% of the world total. It's still a very buoyant and very healthy industry. But what we're now starting to see is the growth of other sport economies around the world. So for example, China. China has a vision to create a domestic sport economy worth $850 billion US by 2025. Europe is a very mature market, but is continuing to grow and develop. We see in countries like India, for example, sport is very popular. So my view is that sport as an industry is in many ways still in its infancy and will continue to grow. In terms of what some of the big issues might be in the future, there are several things that people talk about when I speak with them. One is digital and social. And so these areas are a very important part of the industry for sport. Fan engagement is a big issue. There are lots of fans around the world who do like to go and watch games, but equally there are fans there who read social media posts online, they buy merchandise, they watch on TV, they go to cafes and bars and talk about it to their friends. So fan engagement is a big issue too. And I think there are other areas around broadcasting, around sponsorship, around event staging. So sport is not going anywhere. It's here to stay, and I think in industrial and economic terms it will get bigger and bigger. United States is big, Europe is big and mature. We're seeing some real growth in China in sport right now. There are places in Africa, so for example in South Africa, in Nigeria, where sport is growing and developing. Clearly we have Brazil in South America, just hosted the Olympic Games, also held the World Cup in 2014. And so I think there is a universal acceptance of the economic and commercial role that sport plays in the world, but I think also the social and cultural role that sport plays. And a lot of countries too are using sport for political purposes, for soft power purposes. And so it is almost as though sport is discovering a new strength and a new role in the world. And certainly we see that in countries, we see that in Britain. Britain very actively uses, for example, the Premier League as a way of marketing and branding itself. But I think even in Manchester, I travel a lot with work, and at previous universities, when I go to, say, for example, China, or I go to Africa, I have to explain where it is that I work. But of course, when I go to somewhere like China and I say, hey, I work in Manchester, straight away people know United, they know City, perhaps they know a little bit about rugby or cricket or cycling. So sport is powerful and important across the world, but I think what Manchester needs to know and to acknowledge and to value is that sport is a very key part of the city's identity, and it helps the city engage with the rest of the world.